try that again.
It's great to be able to sit by myself and just be able to do this. It's like a real luxury, actually. And, I don't feel a lot of pressure. It's kind of fun. I'm getting a chance to think.
Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
So, Revenge of the Sith is not only a great, thunderous, and grotesque finale to this three-part tragedy, but it is also a great example of the statement, 0 to 100 real quick. And I'm not saying that the death of a mother wouldn't trigger perhaps a great amount of emotional pain in someone, but I don't know if it would drive someone to do what Anakin does in this film. If Phantom represents the innocent stage of Anakin's life, and Attack of the Clones is meant to be the transition with a bit of an intense hiccup, then Revenge of the Sith is just... Tragedy as a genre is really odd to me because I don't know if it exists anymore in the way that we may want it to, and I don't know how we can continue forward with it. Tragedy as a genre, one more time, because tragedy in the sense of the traditional are stories that are about an individual in which something tragic happens to them, but modern tragedy, or the attempt to classify what happens today that is tragic, those are stories about people. They focus on the relation we have with one another and the world and the intersections that lie there. And often these end up being about mundane, regular, everyday peasant people. And who the fuck wants to talk about peasant people? Tragedy happens to people, not just one person that the universe or the gods or the devil has struck with a tragic hand. And Revenge of the Sith is a modern tragedy told through the forceful lens of the traditional tragedy, which makes it simultaneously super complex and unsettling. The epistemology, epistemology? Etymology? Is it etymology? Study of ongoing work. Yeah. The etymology of the word tragedy basically breaks down to mean goat song, which is something that doesn't really mean anything for Revenge of the Sith, so do with that what you will. In Greek tragedy, it is understood that the plot must feature a protagonist who is a high-born character of ordinary mortal value. They have to be a normal person or of ordinary mortal value at the beginning of the story, because that is what will set them apart from the powers that be, the gods. And this protagonist will suffer a fatal flaw, recognized in Greek theater as hamartia. Often this can be greed, jealousy, envy, ambition beyond means, lust for power or control, qualities in a person that may not be categorized as solely bad, but tragedy tells us that if these be left unattended, they can eat away at a person. They're eventually fatal. They expose one's humanness, what sets them apart from the gods. The story and the plot will follow how this rich person, who can also die, is eventually eaten alive, and they're gonna lose all their money, and then they're gonna die. And you might be thinking, well, Anakin Skywalker, he doesn't have any money. And you're right, Anakin Skywalker doesn't have any money. At the beginning of the story, he's a slave, and even after he's scooped into the world of the Jedi, Anakin still remains fairly powerless. This is not a story about a highborn character of ordinary mortal value. Anakin is actually a very non-normal character. He's literally magic. He can move things with his mind. He is an incredibly talented pilot. He's pretty good with a lightsaber. He's literally the chosen one. He is a wizard, the last samurai Jesus, and there is so much hope for him and what lays ahead. So he's rich in talent, rich in prophecy. He's destined to be greater than he already is. Anakin Skywalker as a character is also plagued in the prequels by his successor, but also by his pre-successor, who is Darth Vader, because Darth Vader is an iconic character. And obviously Anakin Skywalker within the prequels doesn't know that Darth Vader is the most feared and iconic villain of all cinematic history, but the audience knows that, and that's a fucking problem. Because despite all that, this is a story about a deeply distressed person who will be commanded to cast away those that he loves out of his thoughts and out of his life in his most desperate times of need. These 3 films tell us that Anakin's hamartia, his fatal flaw, is his deep longing to care, to protect, and to prevent harm from reaching those he loves. The films tell us that it is these emotions that can corrupt us. It is these emotions that make us fatally human and set us apart from the unfeeling, all-powerful gods. So how is this tragic? How is this story about a fallen hero, a good man turned evil? Something's not right here. It's like shoving a puzzle piece into an unfinished puzzle, but the puzzle piece doesn't belong, nor does it even fit in another puzzle. That puzzle doesn't even exist. Like, where does this puzzle piece come from? There's 3 films, and we need Anakin Skywalker to be evil by the end of the 3rd film. And we have all these 3 other films, and in those films, Darth Vader does some pretty horrendous shit. And then in this show, Darth Vader is this and that, and he's pretty evil. And in this, he's iconic, and listen to the song and look at the silhouette. But when you look at these 3 films, we get Anakin as an innocent boy, then Anakin as the troubled young Padawan, then the continued circumstances of Anakin's life, but that's not what will lead him into darkness. It's only his fate, his destiny, his chosen one status, as determined by George Lucas and the creative minds behind the prequels, that leads him to becoming Darth Vader. And you might say, Claudia, what? No, the films demonstrate that what happens to Anakin will make him Darth Vader. All fueled by character and by his shit decisions, and he's going to turn to the dark side. He will choose evil. Yeah, those events still occurred, and they're part of the story, but I'm not willing to believe that it is enough to drive a person to evil, like this great grand idea that we've created. I'm willing to believe and know that they needed to get a Darth Vader out of the end of this trilogy, and they were going to do it one way or another, even if it meant ignoring the trauma that Anakin realistically faces. This Den of Geeks article, written by Lloyd Combs, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, describes the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones as being tasked with bridging the gap between young Anakin's carefree pod racing and the man who would become arguably the most feared baddie in movie history. I like to officially ban the word baddie from ever being used. Ever, please. Thanks. I could go into why the prequels in general are already incredibly complicated, and one could argue that prequels shouldn't even exist. Why do we need to know who Darth Vader was before he became Darth Vader? Why does it matter to what is happening in the original films? Why? Like, truly, genuinely, I'm asking why. So I can watch you play the end for 3 movies, George? So I can watch Chekhov's gun smoke for upwards of 7 hours of runtime and wonder when and if it ever went off? They didn't care about the meat of the character, the humanness. It's only destiny, it's only prophecy. Nothing Anakin Skywalker does or says or thinks has effect on him becoming Darth Vader, because that plot, that tragedy, that looms over this character. And he and everyone else in this story, they're being held hostage in this. The puzzle piece, that's the real meat and emotional merit of the story. It must be earned, and it is necessary to a whole character. But the puzzle, the structure, the part that goes, no, he needs to be evil, it is demanding of its own characters, something that, within their own humanness, cannot provide. We're playing the end, but the pieces don't fit. It doesn't line up, and it doesn't work. Because caring for others isn't a fatal flaw. And Anakin going back to save his mother and reacting with such violence because he was not encouraged to nurture healthy emotional habits. Yeah, that's not trauma. That's just evil. That's bad. Anakin is a bad person because he does bad things, because he's prophesized to become the Dark Lord of the entire galactic fucking empire. Don't you understand this basic ass story? Don't look at the character and don't think about their emotions, because it doesn't matter, because look at his cool outfit.
With one hand, hold your protagonist in a firm headlock. And then, with the other hand, walk your audience through the obstacle course that is a lie. Then, and only then, will you hear the goat sing its song. Revenge of the Sith begins with war. This film takes place about 3 years after the events of Attack of the Clones, so there's been a good amount of civil war going on, unrest and unease. People are not doing so hot. I mean, we weren't doing fantastic in Phantom Menace, but now it's really a shit show. The Galactic Senate is in chaos, and the once distant threat of the Sith taking absolute control is now immediate. Obi-Wan and Anakin are on a mission to save the kidnapped Palpatine from the Separatists' lightsaber stealing, quote, known for his hacking cough, cyborg man General Grievous. General Grievous stalks around like this quite a bit, which is unintentionally funny to me, beyond George Lucas's imagining or intent. I also do not know why he is coughing. Is he okay? Is he sick? He coughs so much in this movie. Is the suggestion that antagonists are sick people, physically or mentally, ableist? Is the suggestion that cybernetic individuals are sick an ableist representation? Maybe. Yeah. Palpatine is a Sith Lord, by the way. I don't know if we directly covered that, but it is important to know that the audience at this point is very well aware that he is just living a double life. Count Dooku appears.
Count Dooku.
With the hopes to rid of both Jedi, he swoops down, they do a little choreo, it's better than what we saw earlier. Obi-Wan is flung aside with a force push. A force push is when you use the force to push someone in a piece of like concrete or like... The ships are always falling apart in this movie. The force push knocks Obi-Wan unconscious, the piece of the ship falls, it crushes his legs. While all of this is happening, R2 is out in the hangar and defends himself from 2 large attack droids by burning them alive with gasoline and fire. Anakin duels Dooku alone and chops both his hands off. Cause it's just like they say, an eye for an eye. One hand for both of your fucking hands, please.
He cut off your arm, and you wanted revenge.
And Palpatine talks Anakin into chopping Count Dooku's head off in order to kill him.
Kill him now.
I shouldn't.
Do it.
One might say that this is a lot. In this moment, we witness the beginning of what is established as Anakin's core dilemma that guides his journey to its end. Should he follow the path of the Jedi, bring Count Dooku in as a prisoner for a proper trial, deal as a peaceful protector, or shall he be guided by impulse, fight with anger, take Dooku's life as Palpatine commands him to do because, quote,
It was too dangerous to be kept alive.
Make note of that. That line, he is too dangerous to be left alive, that's going to be repeated a few times in this film. Sorry, this room is occupied. Thanks. I knew that was gonna happen. I knew it. At least once.
Remember what you told me about your mother?
Anakin's decision to listen to Palpatine disturbs him, but not enough to help his master Obi-Wan, whose legs are actually not destroyed. Also, I think it's worth noting that Palpatine is like, leave Obi-Wan behind because we gotta go. We have to leave. And Anakin is like, no, he's my master. I'm gonna save him. And Anakin doesn't mark that as something that's a little bit off for Palpatine to say, for him to just be like, leave your master. Leave him behind. That wasn't a bit like Sith vibes to him. Once Obi-Wan comes to, he and Anakin bring Palpatine.
Wait a minute.
minute. How did this happen? We're smarter than this.
Palpatine to the front of the ship. I don't know if it's called the helm. It's like the front of the ship where you look out when you're riding the ship in hopes to safely land it, which may be impossible because for some reason, I actually don't know why, but the ship is literally falling apart. There's pieces of it falling apart. It's catching on fire. There's a part where the whole, like it's like cut, the whole front of it, it's just falling. It's falling apart and they have to crash land it. But first, they gotta fight General Grievous. So they encounter General Grievous.
Anakin Skywalker.
He insults Anakin by saying,
I was expecting someone with your reputation to be a little older.
and Anakin responds with,
You're shorter than I expected.
which is a hilarious attempt at an insult because General Grievous is 8 feet tall. Is he not tall enough, Anakin? When people speak of you, they say you are a talented Jedi. And when people speak of General Grievous, they say he's really tall. There's some more mindless droid hacking.
You lose, General Kenobi.
And General Grievous flees.
Time to abandon ship.
There's a lot of characters saying what they're doing in the first 30 minutes of this film. They're like, I'm running away, or they'll never catch me. It's like fucking horrible. They deploy all the escape pods, which forces Anakin and Obi-Wan to attempt to land the ship, which they kind of do. Good thing there's people in the command tower to tell them where to land. Oh, okay.
Another happy landing.
Something that is also established in this film, which was already hinted at in Attack of the Clones, is Anakin's competitiveness against Obi-Wan. He doesn't want his master's help. He enjoys outpacing Obi-Wan. He enjoys answering him with quips to outwit Obi-Wan. He's definitely a better pilot, but not a better Jedi. Although Anakin is still represented as being quite impulsive, I think Obi-Wan has grown to handle this. It is also hinted that the remainder of the Jedi Council do not trust Anakin, nor do they agree with his growing closeness to Chancellor Palpatine. Padme greets Anakin in the shadows, and although they are married, the Jedi and the Senate are not aware of their union.
What's going on?
Padme tells Anakin that she is pregnant. I'm pregnant. And Anakin lies to Padme's face.
That's wonderful.
This news establishes something very critical about what Padme represents in this story, and it is that she and the pregnancy are a burden in Anakin's life. George may have not had those intentions for this event and the effects it has on the course of the story, but women in this way, similarly to Shmi, are written to be out of the way, to submit, to be quite literally in this case, vessels. For a great amount of this film, Padme will sit and stare and remain in her home, mostly completely alone as she endures her pregnancy. It is also established that if she and Anakin are found out, this will have great consequences both on Padme's position as a senator and on Anakin's position as a Jedi Knight. Later on, Padme even suggests that they go into hiding, that they flee to Naboo and raise their child away from politics and away from the war, where no one could harm or judge them. Padme not only represents the burden and threat of ruining Anakin's path as a Jedi, but also represents the supposed burden of a quiet domestic life. But Anakin's no fucking softie. He's a relentless, powerful, talented Jedi, and he's gonna get what he wants. You're ruining the adventure, Padme, with your baby. I'm also left wondering, and I'm not the first to ask this, but for a couple who both have jobs that will apparently banish them if they have children, I'm just wondering why forms of contraception aren't available to them. Like, where are the condoms? The Jedi are forbidden to have children, and Wikipedia states that, quote, the Jedi Order did not permit Jedi to marry due to a prohibition on possessive attachment that could lead to the dark side. But George himself has said that the Jedi are not celibate. So, tip number 5. This one is important, okay? This one's really important. I hope someone walks in. If so, please establish this to your audience, or else they will have questions. They will ask. Are there condoms available? Is that so much to ask? With Count Dooku gone, General Grievous now answers as political and military leader, and Darth Sidious, who is Chancellor Palpatine, mysteriously tells him that the war is almost over, and that he must bring the other separatists to the planet of Mustafar. Mustafar? I can't keep up with all these fucking planets, dude. I'm sorry. I'm a fake fan. Palpatine also informs Grievous that he will soon find himself a new Sith apprentice, one who is much younger and much, much more powerful. Then, in case you weren't sure who the fuck that might be, we cut to Anakin. He's having a nightmare. And you know it's a nightmare, and an evil one, might I add, because there's this glowy distortion, a black cloudiness added on top of this footage of Padme having a real hard time. Anakin awakes from the nightmare, confused and afraid, and later confesses to Padme that he fears that this was a premonition of her dying in childbirth.
You died.
And Padme is like, oh my God, no, don't worry about that. This will never happen. This is not going to happen to me. We live in a scientifically advanced society, and I have the economic privilege and advantage to pay for the best doctors in the entire galaxy, and you'd be a fool to think that I could die in childbirth. But Anakin is convinced that this nightmare he had is a true threat and promises that he will not allow this to happen to her. Anakin then confides in Yoda about his premonitions, about how he fears that they will become truth. This scene is probably the most pivotal for the entirety of the prequel story when it comes to my perception of the Jedi ideology that commands these films. What is being established visually? This room in which Anakin is confessing something that will later prove to be quite dangerous, it looks like a confession booth that one might find in a Christian church. It's a cabinet that you step into where you get to sit on one side and the priest sits on the other side. You are divided by a wooden wall with a latticed opening to speak through. And as you kneel, you confess with whatever shame, worry, or embarrassment your sins. Although Yoda and Anakin can see each other and sit face to face, they are shrouded in darkness, as the blinds of the room appear to be partially shut. What the light does reveal and draws our focus to is Yoda's face and Anakin's eyes. Anakin tells Yoda that the visions are of pain, suffering, death.
Yourself you speak of, or someone you know?
Someone.
Close to you?
Yes.
Yoda then states that Anakin must tread carefully when having such visions of a possible future, as
The fear of loss is a path to the dark side.
Yoda then continues on to say that death should be rejoiced, that you cannot mourn, you cannot miss, and you cannot become attached to a person, even if you love them.
Attachment leads to jealousy. The shadow of greed, that is.
Yoda's final words to Anakin in this scene is that he must train himself to let go of everything he fears to lose. Okay, so let's just back up real quick here. Imagine going to a trusted mentor to confide in them that you fear your loved one is in danger, and your mentor is like, let them go, because if you hold on to them, that's going to lead you to the dark side. Push your emotions down and away. Imagine living in and through a civil war, and your mentor is like, no, your body should have zero trauma response. Anakin meets with Palpatine, and Palpatine basically tells him that he does not trust the Jedi Council, but that the Senate has granted him more political power to control the Jedi Council. And he appoints Anakin an official position to represent him on the Jedi Council.
Basically, he's telling him to spy on the Jedi for him.
I'm overwhelmed, sir.
The Jedi Council accepts this, but they do not make Anakin a master, as he still has much to learn and is too young. This is unheard of because everyone who sits on a council is also a Jedi master. This upsets and embarrasses Anakin. He shares this frustration with Obi-Wan, who tells him that he does not trust Chancellor Palpatine, that he has too much political power over the Jedi Council.
The Council wants you to report on all the Chancellor's dealings. They want to know what he's up to.
Basically, he's telling him to spy on Chancellor Palpatine for the Jedi. Do we sense a pattern here? Anakin, once again, is being forced to pick a side, and he will remain tormented, confused, and unsupported until he makes a character-defining decision. His premonitions of Padme's death and suffering continue. Padme continues to become more and more pregnant and attempts to tend to Anakin's troubling attitude.
I think this war is destroying the principles of the Republic.
What if the democracy we thought we were serving no longer exists, and the Republic has become the very evil we've been fighting to destroy?
At one point, Anakin accuses Padme.
I don't believe that. And you're sounding like a separatist.
Which, again, Padme, this is your chance. Get in your spaceship and get the fuck out of here. Imagine being pregnant and then your husband is like, you're acting like a fucking separatist. I'm not blaming Padme for staying with her husband, and I don't think it's out of character that she would stay. I am blaming George, because he gave this woman nothing to do for 2 whole movies. Palpatine meets with Anakin again, but this time not in his quarters, but at an operatic, water bubble, swimming alien fish theater performance, which emits a low, ominous rumble for the remainder of the scene. I find it incredibly distracting. And according to Wikipedia, the performance occurring is canonically Squid Lake, which makes me feel too many things that I don't know how to elaborate on. Palpatine and Anakin go back and forth a bit. You should have been a Jedi Master, stupid Jedi Order. They've located General Grievous. Things are looking up. The Sith and the Jedi are actually quite similar, which I can't believe they allowed that line to make it past the first draft and be in the movie.
The Sith and the Jedi are similar in almost every way, including their quest for greater power.
Because putting that line of dialogue in there just threatens the entire foundation, the entire philosophy that your film is resting on. But also Palpatine says it, so, you know, he's wrong because he's evil. What will follow is the performance of a lifetime that should have earned Ian McDiarmid every single award at the 2005 Oscars. All of the awards, give them to him. He's holding up this whole fucking movie on his back. Give Ian McDiarmid everything he wants, which is what Anakin does in this scene. He asks a few curious inquiries and Palpatine just goes for it. He's got Anakin in the palm of his hand now. Because he is a Sith, I can assume that this is how he senses and knows that Anakin has been suffering of premonitions, doubt towards the Jedi, and confusion for his own future. He then commences with the telling of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Plagueis? How do you fucking spell that? Plagueis. Okay, exactly like it sounds.
Plagueis.
Okay, exactly like it sounds. This might be the most memed, if not like I don't like sand scene, this might be the most memed like thing to come out of this whole movie, but it's like, it's in all seriousness, it's performed great. Again, Ian McDiarmid is like just, he's doing it all. This scene is also supposed to be very serious. It's just also very funny. Darth Plagueis the Wise is a story, a cautionary tale if you will, about a powerful Sith Lord who learned to master the dark side to the point of being able to create life. He also found that he could prevent death from reaching those that he loved. If we understand Palpatine as telling the truth, then this leads us to suspect, like we touched on earlier, that he created Anakin by manipulating midichlorians to impregnate Shmi. If we are to interpret Palpatine as a good-for-nothing liar, like I'm about to do, then we can understand that Palpatine is taking emotional advantage by manipulating Anakin into thinking that this is a possibility for him. And Anakin does ask,
Can these powers be learned? And Palpatine answers that they can, but not by a Jedi. Only a Sith has these teachings and this power to manipulate the course of life and prevent death from taking away those we love most. Palpatine also adds that Darth Sidious, although powerful, was killed in his sleep by his apprentice. Palpatine finds this rather ironic, funny even, and if Anakin wasn't such a dumbass, then maybe he would have taken the hint that Chancellor Palpatine is the young apprentice who killed his Sith master in the story. Not good. But yeah, I don't think that Darth Sidious has the power to do any of that. I don't even know if he existed. Even the statement that the dark side of the Force can allow a Sith to engage in powers deemed unnatural, I don't know if that's true. Palpatine's story, true or not, doesn't actually matter because Anakin believes him fully. Anakin is now left with the hopeless idea that if he truly loves Padme and if he truly wishes to save her from her supposed fate, then he must learn these powers one way or another. It's a trick. It's a story meant to warn the audience of what will inevitably happen to the eventual Darth Vader, spoiler alert, and his master, and what will happen in this film, which is the eventual downfall of a person flying too close to the sun, too lustful for power, too ambitious, too in love, and too angry. Anakin's desire to save Padme becomes further skewed as the film goes on. It is skewed by Yoda and manipulated by Palpatine to justify the narrative that Anakin, again, is going to be the most evil, the Darthiest Darth Vader, just the most powerful Sith in the galaxy. The Jedi Council decides to send Obi-Wan over Anakin on the mission to meet General Grievous at his end on the planet of Utapau. Utapu? It's where General Grievous is located, okay? Again, with the competition, we're forced to view Obi-Wan as being favored by the Council, as he is a master and has more skill and more respect. This is represented as something that continues to weigh on Anakin.
I've disappointed you.
They bid their goodbyes, the dialogue exchanged is incredibly clunky, and this isn't Ewan McGregor's fault.
I've been arrogant, and I apologize.
I have trained you since you were a small boy.
Obi-Wan, may the Force be with you.
Goodbye, old friend.
I don't know if I've actually addressed how not great of an actor Hayden Christensen is. It feels like punching down if I make fun of Hayden Christensen. Okay, I'll say this. I don't think he's the worst actor, but if a different, perhaps a better actor played Anakin in these films, I don't know how much would actually change. So, good job, Hayden Christensen. This is also the last time that these two will get to see each other before the chaos. We're gonna call it the chaos. This stings even more because Obi-Wan wants to tell Anakin that he is very proud of him, that soon he will be made a Jedi Master by the Council. Ha! On Utapau, Obi-Wan rides a lizard named Boga. I'm fully here for Boga. I love Boga and everything that Boga will ever be. Boga is the best Star Wars character ever created. Obi-Wan quickly locates General Grievous.
Hello there.
And they engage in a lightsaber duel battle time.
You are a bold one. Kill him.
There's a lot of jarring and intense camera work.
Oh, I don't think so.
Grievous has 4 arms and many lightsabers. It is quite the dramatic spectacle, George. So why am I laughing? Obi-Wan disarms Grievous by cutting off 2 of his arms along with the lightsabers that are holding them. Okay. Does that make sense? It's like, there's this round motorcycle. That's not a good descriptor for what it is, but that is what this thing is. It's a round motorcycle. Obi-Wan catches up, thanks to Boga, the lizard, king of my heart. And Obi-Wan finally kills General Grievous, shoots him through the heart. His eyes explode in flames. It's pretty classy, and it's not funny at all. This movie is so full of class, and the Jedi are honorable keepers of peace, and that philosophy never wavers for the sake of spectacle.
So uncivilized.
Remember when Anakin at the beginning of the movie was like, no, I can't kill Count Dooku, that's not the Jedi way. But every other Jedi is like slicing people's heads off, shooting people in the gut, fire, flames coming out of his eyes. Like, is that the Jedi way, Obi-Wan? I don't blame Anakin for being a little confused here. Alright, this is the last one. Do you know what you are writing? I'm just wondering if you... Right? Does that make sense to everybody? Back to Palpatine and Anakin, who are again meeting in his quarters. Anakin shares how he, again, wishes he had been the one assigned to find General Grievous and not Obi-Wan. He believes that the Jedi Council is ignoring his talents and brushing him aside. Palpatine plays into this, agreeing and then admits to having knowledge of the Force, both the light and dark sides.
You know the dark side?
Anakin, if one is to understand the great mystery, one must study all its aspects, not just the dogmatic, narrow view of the Jedi.
Anakin is shocked to hear this, but Palpatine insists that the dark side will save Padme's life.
From certain death.
What did you say?
And finally, Anakin realizes that Palpatine is actually a Sith Lord, and that he is the Sith Lord behind the war, the great Darth Sidious, the man from the story, the apprentice who killed his master. Anakin, I don't know why it took you so long. He is the Phantom Menace, the attack, and the revenge.
You're the Sith Lord.
Anakin holds his lightsaber to Palpatine, and Palpatine goes, "Fucking do it, you won't."
Are you going to kill me?
I would certainly like to.
I know you would. I can feel your anger.
And Anakin doesn't. Instead, he goes to Mace Windu, the purple lightsaber man. I don't know if we've covered that, but Mace Windu, who is, wildly known as Samuel Jackson, he said, "Fuck you, George, I want a purple lightsaber." And George did give him a purple lightsaber. Just because. And Mace Windu is like, "Oh my god, Chancellor Palpatine is the Sith Lord we've been looking for all along."
A Sith Lord?
Yes.
How could we not have known this? I don't know, Mace, y'all kind of fucked up. Mace Windu tells Anakin to stay back in safety while he carries out the arrest. What then follows is the brief, stunningly cinematic, out of Kubrick's 2001, out of some other sci-fi psychological thriller. I don't know where this came from, but George came through for about 2 minutes with this fucking incredible scene out of nowhere.
If the Jedi destroy me.
When I was rewatching Revenge of the Sith, I remember yelling, alone, at my screen, "Oh my god, what the fuck, this is actually good." George, what, what happened? Me describing the scene does not do it justice at all, so I highly encourage you to actually watch Revenge of the Sith for this 2 minutes. Honestly, Anakin is standing on one side of the city staring out, and this is mirrored by Padme, who stands from her own home staring back. The sunset and sky are stunning. The clouds glow red, pink, and pale blue. The scene has no dialogue from either Padme or Anakin. Very little actually happens. Anakin cries.
and Padme looks distraught. This is the only scene where I believe that Anakin is truly torn and then makes his decision. This is the only scene where I can believe that he's truly ready to commit to doing anything for Padme in order to save her and their child's life. It's the only scene where I feel that Anakin has power over his actions in this plot, even though in reality, this scene actually demonstrates how powerless both Anakin and Padme are. It's fucking great. Good job, George. You made me feel something.
Okay, I lied. It wasn't the last one earlier. This is the last one.
Master Windu.
We now follow Mace Windu, joined by other Jedi reinforcements as they go to corner Palpatine in his quarters and tell him that he's under arrest for deceiving the Republic and the Jedi Order. And Palpatine is like, let's go. He does this magician thing where the card is like in the sleeve, but it's not a card, it's his red lightsaber. Wig reveal, fucking here we go. Palpatine strikes down literally all of the Jedi except for Mace Windu. Did those Jedi not pay attention in lightsaber dueling class? How the fuck did they all get slayed so hard? Mace Windu and Darth Sidious fight. Mace Windu gains some momentum and gets Sidious on the ground. And then Anakin arrives. And Windu is like,
"You are under arrest, my lord."
Anakin.
And then Darth Sidious has lightning hands.
No. 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 You will die!
And the lightning hands beam, the lightning beam hits Mace Windu's purple lightsaber, and it deflects, like it absorbs the energy and deflects it back onto Palpatine. So it's hitting Sidious, and the makeup team was like, oh yeah, the budget. And all of a sudden, Sidious is 500 years old, and this scene triggers a very specific memory of me as a child watching this happen, and I was like, oh god, this is really gross. And it goes on for quite a while. He's like shaking and writhing and like turning into this layered old nasty man. And Sidious is like, Anakin, help me, please. I am so weak. Do not let him kill me. And Anakin is like, he must stand trial.
It's not the Jedi way. He must live.
And Windu is like, he's too dangerous to be left alive.
He's too dangerous to be left alive.
But that's what...
He was too dangerous to be kept alive.
The beginning, when the scene was telling us that he had given in and was tempted by darkness with Palpatine's like influence, right? But now Mace Windu says it in a scene where the audience, I'm guessing, is supposed to be on Mace Windu's side, but he says that so that the film can try to justify what Anakin will do next, which is side with Darth Sidious and basically make a very, very bad decision. And Sidious strikes him with lightning again, and he blasts him out the window. And Anakin is like, what the fuck did I just do?
Come, my apprentice. Learn to use the dark side of the Force.
I will do whatever you ask.
And Palpatine is like, good, yes. So Anakin is now evil.
Just help me save Padme's life.
Is the movie done? No. Anakin is named Darth Vader.
Henceforth, you shall be known as Darth Vader.
He's like, okay, sick. Sidious tells him that they must rid of all remaining Jedi, something that we learn was the plan all along. It's called Order 66. I'm sure you've maybe heard of her. Anakin is like, okay, sick. And then Sidious is like,
you have to go into the Jedi Temple and kill all the Padawans. And Anakin is like, okay, super fucking sick.
Once more, the Sith will rule the galaxy.
And what follows is a montage of Order 66, which is overwhelming.
Cute Order 66.
It's just a bunch of Jedi being killed all over the galaxy, and Yoda getting an increasingly worse and worse headache. Because the clone army has technically always been in Palpatine's control due to his abuse of political and military power, the clone army responds to Order 66 and turns against the Jedi. Obi-Wan is trying to just hang out with Boga, my boy! And Obi-Wan and Boga fall into this lake, and I don't want to say it, but I think Boga swims away, and we never get to see him again. He's not dead, okay? Obi-Wan swims to shore safely and looks very fucking confused. Anakin goes into the Jedi Temple where all of the younglings are hiding, and he kills them all. He kills all of the kids. So just in case you had a small amount of sympathy left for him, you now have none. I really love morally complex characters who definitely do not stray into extremes beyond my comprehension. He's just super duper evil, okay? And then he goes home to Padme, and she's like, I have been worried sick. There have been attacks all over the city. The Jedi Temple is on fire for some reason. What is going on? And Anakin is like, don't even worry about it. Everything is great. I'm going to the volcano planet called Mustafar to betray and kill all of the separatists that were promised by Darth Sidious peace, glory, and the end of the war. I mean, he doesn't like tell Padme that in detail. He's just like, no babe, it's fine, and his eyes are like bleeding. Yoda brushes shoulders with death but escapes the fate of Order 66 and gets in his mini spaceship to meet with Obi-Wan because they've got some shit to talk about. This guy, his name is Senator Bail Organa, because he bails out the last two remaining Jedi to save. His name is fucking Bail. Anakin arrives on the volcano planet of Mustafar, kills the remaining separatists. Sidious disguises himself once again as Chancellor Palpatine and announces to the Republic that they are reorganizing into a galactic empire. He totally does not pass the vibe check, and Padme is like, we are fucked.
So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause.
Obi-Wan and Yoda return to the Jedi Temple. They find the bodies of many killed Jedi and the young Padawans. Obi-Wan checks the security footage, but not before Yoda warns him that that may not be a good idea.
If into the security recordings you go, only pain will you find.
I must know the truth, Master.
Obi-Wan watches his once dear friend and apprentice, Anakin Skywalker, kill a bunch of children. And Obi-Wan is like, we are fucked. And then Obi-Wan tells Padme this.
Anakin has turned to the dark side.
And Padme is like, no.
How could you even say that?
Not Anakin.
I have seen a security hologram of him killing younglings.
He would never kill a bunch of kids.
Not Anakin. He couldn't.
Natalie Portman is such a good actor, so I don't understand what George told her to do. Did he tell her to tone it down and not be a good actor for a movie with such high emotional stakes and such absurd circumstances? Is this not the movie where we need to believe what everyone is saying and doing? They're flying around in spaceships. It's not a believable movie. So the actors should at least be, you know, just present, but also like grounded. The actors should be good. Obi-Wan is like,
You need to tell me where Anakin is, because Yoda tell me I have to destroy the Sith, and Padme is like, are you gonna kill Anakin? And Obi-Wan is like, does that not make you want to tell me where he is? I don't understand. And she refuses to tell Obi-Wan where Anakin has gone. But it doesn't matter, because Obi-Wan sneaks onto Padme's ship. As she decides to pursue Anakin anyway in hopes to get to the bottom of this. Also, Obi-Wan figures out that Anakin is the father to Padme's child, and this is the only time in the entire film that anyone acknowledges that Padme is in fact 9 months pregnant. It's like George forgot that she was fucking pregnant. And Obi-Wan's like, I'm still gonna kill him. I'm so sorry. At one point, Yoda fights Darth Sidious in the Senate room. Throws a bunch of Senate chairs at him, like the round chair. It's not like one chair, it's like a holder of multiple chairs that float around the Senate. He's just throwing them at Yoda. And Yoda is like CGI jumping. It sucks. And then Yoda escapes and he has to go into exile. Padme lands on Mustafar wearing a top with no sleeves, and her skin doesn't burn off, even in the climate that is a volcano planet. There's like fire in the air and like lava on the ground, okay? Do you have like a jacket or something? Do you have eye protection? Is there like an oxygen tank available somewhere? Anakin greets her like all of this is normal. He's like, oh my god, babe, what are you doing here? And Padme is like, Obi-Wan told me that you killed children, and I don't think this is gonna work. And Anakin is like, we will rule the galaxy together.
We don't have to run away anymore. I have brought peace to the Republic. I am more powerful than the Chancellor. I can overthrow him. And together, you and I can rule the galaxy.
Which, I didn't know this was a dream of Anakin's, but it's brought up in this moment that he and Padme will rule the galaxy together. Apparently.
Make things the way we want them to be.
And then he also is like, Obi-Wan is a bitch. Why are you talking to him? And he, trigger warning, he proceeds to force choke Padme, and Obi-Wan appears and he's like, can you fucking stop it?
Let her go, Anakin!
And Anakin, with his displaced anger, goes, you turned her against me. And Obi-Wan is like, you did that yourself.
You will not take her from me! Your anger and your lust for power have already done that.
And they leave the unconscious, pregnant Padme on the lava rock ground to have their lightsaber fight extravaganza. Over the lava lake, on a communication tower thing that breaks. They're fighting and arguing, and there's fire and lava. And this shot is cool. They're like in the hallway and the lightsabers hit and there's sparks. It's a change of the space. It's cool. The choreo is pretty tight for this sequence, but it does go on for quite a while.
You, Anakin. I should have known the Jedi were plotting to take over. Anakin, Chancellor Palpatine is evil. From my point of view, the Jedi are evil. Then you are lost.
Obi-Wan delivers the iconic
I have the high ground.
I don't know why this line made its meme rounds for so long. Obi-Wan quite literally has the high ground and announces this, but also metaphorically has the high ground because he fights with the light side of the Force. He is good and just, which is why he left Padme unconscious alone.
You underestimate my power! Don't try it!
And Anakin foolishly jumps. And Obi-Wan, with a slice of his lightsaber, just cuts Anakin's legs off at the knee, and Anakin falls and screams in pain. It's horrible to watch. And Obi-Wan is like, "You were my brother. I loved you.
You were the chosen one! You were my brother, Anakin! I loved you!"
And Anakin catches on fire. Then Padme is in labor, and guess what? She's not having a great time, and Darth Sidious finds Anakin's burnt body and retrieves him from the edge of the lava river, and I hate this scene because I'm super fucking squeamish, but they give Anakin a new outfit, and it kind of looks like this. Oh my god, that's the guy!
He has lost the will to live. We need to operate quickly if we are to save the babies.
Babies?
She's carrying twins.
As Padme is drawing her last breaths, Obi-Wan is able to get her to name her children. And yes, they were twins, and they are named Luke and Leia, and Padme dies. Out of the way. Disposable. Not in the story anymore. A vessel for greater tragic transformation for Anakin, now Darth Vader. And Darth Sidious is like, "Hello, Dark Lord." And Darth Vader is like, "Where's Padme? Is she okay?" And Darth Sidious is like, "What the fuck do you think?" No, she's not okay. She died. What Darth Sidious does say is that, quote, "It seems that in your anger, you killed her." Oops.
I couldn't have.
And then Darth Vader is like, "No," and it like shakes the whole building. So powerful now. He force yells. Padme's funeral is held on Naboo. In her open casket, she wears the necklace of her abuser. Awesome. The twins, Luke and Leia, are sent to their respective homes, hopefully away from the war, and now are in safety, but in hiding. Leia goes with Bail Organa, as he and his wife always planned on adopting a daughter. This is shown to be a beautiful, lush, and rich planet, much like Naboo, and Luke is sent to fucking Tatooine, where he will be raised by his uncle on a moisture farm. The end! Okay, so what did we learn today? In a really weird way, I feel that even though we hate the story that we got, it was inevitable. Anakin was always going to be written in this way as a character because of the circumstances of the concoction that George thinks is tragedy. We were always going to get this kind of villain origin story because most villain origin stories ignore basic human psychology in order to tell an entertaining, chair-gripping tale about those who fall to evil. The Star Wars structural narrative of Jedi versus Sith, goodness versus the darkness, contorts its very real characters, dealing with very real-world problems, and forces the audience to play along. This ideology corrupts its own story, but if we decide to ignore prophesized structuralist evil as a possibility or focus on the complexities of a person and how they may have arrived to a state that they are in, all of it falls apart. What I mean by prophesized structuralist evil is the idea that evil resides in the body and psyche as truth, as something that one is, something that a person is doomed to eventually be. But evil isn't a structure, it's a system. Anakin Skywalker is a deeply troubled person susceptible to emotional manipulation and abuse, attempting to exist in a crumbling socio-political climate as somebody who was scooped from child slavery and brought to a child soldier program disguised as the training of peacekeepers. There's something really weird going on with the prequel trilogy, and we've touched on it a little bit, but it goes a little something like this. Yeah, you were born into some shit circumstances and had a hard time growing up, but now, because of your unchecked anger, you've chosen the dark side, and the whole of the Galactic Senate is falling apart, and everyone is at war, and evil has seeped through the cracks. You fucking idiot, Anakin Skywalker. Is this the story? What's the lesson here to be learned? That we are products of our environment, but also some of us may be susceptible to ultimate forms of evil if we're not responsible enough? If you give in to the temptation that is an old wizard disguised as a politician promising you that your wife will survive childbirth, that means that you're bad. You fucked up. You're just so evil, Anakin. How could you? How could you be fearful of what seems to be inevitable to you? Why didn't you listen to the careful counseling of Master Yoda, who told you to just push that shit down? You just push that fear down and away, and you grab your lightsaber and do your fucking job. Not that that sounds like anything that would happen in real life. The films not only want you to adopt the philosophy that evil can be in you, but they also want you to believe that Anakin has brought this upon himself, that this is his fault. Characters like Yoda, Mace Windu, Qui-Gon, and Palpatine are written to ignore the barriers that are existing for some of our characters here, and therefore reinforce the idea that Anakin is not struggling. He's just evil. Padme, Shmi, Anakin, Obi-Wan, to name a few, are characters who are struggling, and instead of addressing these undeniable structures of oppression, instead of even having Anakin talk about it in a way that is more direct and relatable than, I don't like sand, instead we get, you should have been a better person. What the fuck? How can you portray one individual character as responsible to bear the cross of this entire collapsed system and then go, so that's why he's evil? That's it. And none of this lands fault on the system. No, the films tell us that Anakin should have been stronger, a better husband, a better Jedi, in order to have avoided all of this. The story penalizes Anakin for having this anger and expressing it. The story lays blame on the individual by falsely claiming that it was in his power to change everything about the barriers and brokenness that stood in his way to happiness. That's like telling somebody in the modern world that they have power over their physical state of being. Like, you don't want to live in a capitalist society? Well, then you better work hard to get the fuck out of it. That has also never happened in real life. And you might be thinking, well, Claudia, that's ridiculous. Are you suggesting that cautionary tales about tragic heroes can't exist? Are you saying that tragedy can't exist? Where am I gonna get my catharsis from then? What do you think they're trying to say? It's a silly sci-fi pew-pew laser sword movie. They don't want you to be like Anakin. He's seduced to the dark side. Some of us are just bad guys. That's the story, and we shouldn't be bad guys. We should be good. And you're right, I can't really say that you're wrong. Unsurprisingly, most of Star Wars messaging boils down to telling its audience that we should all be good. A lot of media, unsurprisingly, tells you that you should be good, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing. People should want to be good, right? We shouldn't want to be bad, because look at all these bad people. Look at how unhappy and fucked they are. If you commodify happiness, you can control what looks bad and what looks good. I don't know what this class is anymore. Sith Lords, Darth Vader, commanders, whatever, they're all bad because they're weakened by temptation with their sickly lust for power. This is the Harmatia. This is the goat singing the goat song. The idea that goodness is attained and maintained through strength is deeply ableist and wrong because, unfortunately for our narrative here, goodness doesn't exist simply, and it doesn't exist as a biological structure, just like how evil doesn't exist simply or as something that someone is doomed to be. George Lucas doesn't want to tell a story about the human condition in a way that is complex and nuanced, because I don't think he believes that a great story lies there. I don't think he has found drama or spectacle or tragedy there. And it's not that nuanced and vulnerable stories about trauma cannot exist. They do, and I encourage you to seek them out. They're worth viewing, they're worth being a part of. It's just that I don't think George is a good enough writer. I'm not saying that I changed my mind or that I'm taking back what I said. I'm allowing myself to be gentle and recognize that my opinions can evolve. And I'm wondering if I should lend some of this gentleness and this forgiveness and this empathy to George, because I think, like, in my humble opinion, I think he did a bad job. I am not alone in that opinion. At the same time, writing is very difficult. I love doing it, and I still think it's really difficult and really lonely sometimes. And maybe it's easy for me to just say, well, George Lucas has a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of people around him who care about Star Wars. He was maybe even in the ideal conditions to write the best prequels ever, and he didn't. And I think that's where I feel myself get stumped and trip up a little bit, because, you know, how could he not? What the fuck happened? I guess what we really need to be asking is, how could we demand so much, and instead of allowing George to hold this project in his arms like a baby, you know, the way that you want to be able to look at your own creative endeavors and say, look at what I made, but rather force George to kind of hold it on his back, on his shoulders, the way that you never want to hold your own creative work. Who the fuck is supposed to write the best next chapter in sci-fi with everyone meaning like millions of people, fans of your work? And how do you answer to that? How do you please everyone like that? You accidentally make 3 of the shittiest movies ever, and maybe you eventually are able to hold them in your arms like a baby and say, everyone hates you, but I don't, because you're mine.